legendary, iconically influential guitar player Frank Marino. As promised, Frank Marino, a Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush fame, I should say, a guy that so many people are fans of that went on to have huge success, maybe the biggest being Zakk Wylde, who absolutely worships Frank. Don't hear from him all that often. This is the very first time I ever talked to the guy or met the guy. We talk about his new Blu-ray. The interview, as you're about to hear, happened over the phone, but it was great talking to him. I think you're going to enjoy it. Here is Frank Marino. Frank, it's nice to meet you over the phone. How are you?
It's great to meet you too, Eddie. I'm pretty good. Everything's okay.
I've heard nothing but amazing things about some of your shows and say they've been sporadic. I know there's not been a lot of them, but friends of mine who've seen you play in recent years just come back raving, and it's long overdue that we get a chance to chat. And obviously this new collection that's just come out is pretty exciting. The fans seem to be really pumped, and it's an amazing set. Tell me a little bit about how this came together.
Well, it was a long time in the making. I've never been, I never really wanted to do a lot of video stuff because I always just, I preferred the audio portion of music. But for years and years, many people in the industry have been saying to me, Frank, you got to do video. Everybody does video. And I avoided it for a long, long time until a couple of people who, they happened to be the video producers for Bruce Springsteen. They'd done like 12 or 13 with him, and they just kept telling me, you got to do one. And I just wouldn't do one. And finally the guy said, if you're not going to do it, we're going to do it. So I was doing this gig in Cleveland at the Agora, and they showed up with their trucks and everything and said, we're doing that video you should have been doing 10 years ago. So they did. They recorded it, and in the end, it turned out to be pretty cool. I decided that if I was going to do one, I wanted to do as much as possible in one day. So I said, look, rather than just play a gig, let's just play all day. And, let's play the night before. We'll have a sound check. And then the next day we'll play for, 12 hours and take a couple of breaks. And so we did. We recorded a whole bunch of stuff, and everything was good. And then there was a little problem with the audio, which took me a few years to fix. But here it is. It's done. It's great. And I'm happy it's done.
Well, yeah, because the collection as it is I think clocks in at somewhere around 6 hours. But so that is wild. So you're telling me that this, I'm assuming, was shot a few years ago, but you went and you played basically for an audience that long? The set was that long?
Yeah, normally I do 3 to 4 hour shows. Okay, so that's not crazy for me, but the night before, we had the Friday night where we just, let the people in anyway. And we basically, sound checked and got everything ready and played from, 7 o'clock till midnight. And then the next day we came back at noon and we started around 1 and we finished around 1 in the morning. But we took a couple of breaks in the day. And out of all of that, I basically gleaned six solid hours of music. I didn't put any of the talking and stuff into the DVD production. I just figured, people want to see the music, so put it together as a concert, and it's actually three sets, if you want to put it this way, and put them in the set like that. I just felt that, maybe one day we could do the rest of it. You never know, but yeah, that's what it ended up being, 6 hours out of the 12 or more that we actually did.
How many people that were in the room in terms of audience, what percentage would you say actually watched the entire thing?
100%.
Really?
Yeah, they don't leave. It's always been like that with us. We have a really sort of a dedicated kind of, I hate to use the word fan base because I'm more like supporters, I think fans
right.
is kind of like a bit, different than I'd like to say. So they're supporters. They've supported the act. Some people have said, that the fans of the group are almost like deadheads, all right, in a sense that they, follow us from gig to gig, and they're.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds kind of like a jam band mentality. That's kind of common in the jam band community.
Yeah, Eddie, totally. I mean, look, that's what I did in the late '60s. Like when I started, that's what the band is. I mean, let's face it, I'm not a singing star, and it's not like we had pop tunes or hits and stuff like that. It really is an original jam band.
Yeah.
And we still do that to this day. Like what you see on this Blu-ray or this DVD is pretty much what we've always done, and it's very, very natural. It's just the way I was started in music, and I've always maintained that. It's just something I do because I like it. I love it, actually, and I think we've got those kind of supporters that kind of like that too. They're not all players, by the way. It's not just guitarists and players that follow what we do. It's people that like that kind of organic, make it up as you go music type of thing. Although there are songs, of course, from the albums, but a lot of it's jamming.
Yeah, no, that is wild. I didn't realize it was to that degree, and that it was it's a full weekend experience to go and see Frank Marino. And that does make sense now too, because obviously and I talk about this all the time. The 70s were the era for the live record. And the live record could break a band in the 70s. They were landmark releases. Unfortunately, not much of note in terms of real success for live records since the 70s, but there's so many great live ones, including Frank Marino Mahogany Rush Live. And I notice in looking at the liner notes to that record, even back then, you wrote that you would apologize because due to the confines of even a double record or whatever, you weren't able to present your full show even then.
Right, we weren't. And the label that I was on at the time, which was Columbia, was very adamantly against me even doing a live record. And so, they were like, no, you've got to do, another studio record. And I mean, they were fighting me from day one. That's why I finally left in the 80s. It was just like I couldn't take it. Every album was an argument. But when we finally did insist on having the live record done, they put it out. Half of that record was not released. There's still more of that record somewhere, that they didn't release, and that sort of upset me at the time. Because they just, they wouldn't get behind it. The funny thing about it, though, is that, here we are in, 2019, and if you look at the Columbia catalog, I mean, they're still selling that record of all the Mahogany Rush records. So it turned out that they were quite wrong about how people might accept a live album, Look, our band has always been supported by the public. We really never got a whole lot of radio. We really never got a whole lot. We did a couple of TV shows, and we were on the radio for a couple of tunes, but certainly not the hundreds of tunes we did do. But from a live perspective, that's where the bulk of our support always came from, from all the festivals and the gigs that we did. So I'm really not surprised that people would want, fans of the band would want to hear music from our live show, because that's really where we do what we do. I should say this about jamming, Eddie. A lot of people mistake the idea of jamming in jam bands as, some guy taking a solo and then another guy taking a solo. Really jamming is when you're inventing the music as you go, and you only do that if you're listening to the other guys in the band and you're not just waiting for your turn to take a solo. Like genuine jamming, if you think about it from a jazz perspective, guys listen to the other guys in the band, they invent as they go, and it's quite likely that when you're jamming properly, you're going to invent a unique experience each time that you do it. It won't be a repetition of what you did on any other given night. So when I say jam band, that's kind of what I mean. I don't just mean wanking.
Right. Yeah, of course. And, you have no doubt a dedicated, as you mentioned, very, very loyal, passionate fan base out there that people hear about you even now. And whether it be a guy like Zakk Wylde or Steve Vai or any of these guys, Kirk Hammett, that talk about how important you were to shaping their playing, that all obviously maybe puts newer, younger eyes on Frank Marino and what he's done. And you must feel that going on right now. I'm sure that's something that after even all these decades. Do you feel like there's new people because of some of these major name players that you influenced in terms of commercial appeal, pointing to you and saying, hey, you got to check out Frank Marino?
Absolutely, Zach, especially, Marty Friedman, Frank Hannon, a lot of Uli Roth, a lot of these guys have been, very instrumental in helping other people say, hey, I should check out this guy because, even Frederick Åkesson from Opeth and some of the newer bands, they're all doing sort of the same thing. Arch Enemy, all genres of kind of guitar players in bands have sort of pointed to what I did and what I'm doing from the 70s on. I think basically that comes from the fact that, I've been in this business now 50 years, like this year. And when I started, it was kind of unusual at the time because I was 16. It was unusual to have a 16-year-old, producing and making albums and being on, going on tour, playing a wild electric guitar. But years later, it started to become the norm. And by that time, that's when a lot of these guys were, became influenced. It wasn't really so much what Frank was playing. It was, and I hate to say third-person stuff, but it was the fact that he was, So I think a lot of these guys realized that they could all do the same kind of thing. They're a little younger than me by about 10 years, and so that's how it happened, and that's why they say it today. Similar to maybe the way I felt about, let's say, Johnny Winter or Jimi Hendrix or guys like that. That's sort of what they've done. But they've helped immensely to broaden the scope of the audience, and I really don't think their audiences are disappointed in any way when they do, turn on what we do and see that it really is an early influence of what they do.
Now, here in America, I know you were on huge shows back in the day, Cal Jam and all that sort of stuff, and you were certainly out there. But as you alluded to before, the big commercial success, the hit song, that big crossover moment pretty much eluded you most of your career. Did you find that frustrating? Was that something you were sort of chasing, or were you so much sort of in this free spirit, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it mode, that you knew that was probably going to come with the territory, being that creative and expressing yourself the way you do?
I think the last time that I was disappointed about that lack of support at the radio level, let's say, was probably on my first album. Just because the record company that had signed me at the time had made this big allusion to, the fact that, this is going to be something and it's going to be on the radio. And at the time, we didn't really want to even do that. We were considered a counterculture band. And, I considered us a counterculture band that were just doing it to have fun. And these guys sort of talked us into recording. They were like, the enemy. Oh, no, we're going to, get hooked up with the establishment. This is what people were thinking in 69, 70, 71. And so, we did this thing. And then, of course, it didn't really do anything at radio. And I think I was a bit disappointed because they had kind of convinced me that it might do something. But by the second album, that I had totally, not cared about it because I really didn't before either. And so by the second album, I just started doing what I wanted to be doing, and consequently, a lot of those songs are too long for the radio, too many solos for the radio, not enough harmony vocals, so naturally I never expected it. And when we did get some radio play, for instance, late at the end of the 70s, I think it was in 1980 or something, we finally got what was considered a number one radio hit with a song called Strange Dreams. It was not intended to even be that. It was just one of the songs from the album that happened to catch on at, I think it was KLOS, and it became number one for, on 160 stations for many weeks, as I recall. But the funny thing about that tune is that there was no guitar solo on it at all. It's the only tune I've ever done that didn't have a guitar solo. So it was completely, I was like, okay, so now we got on the radio, so now what? And then I just kept on, doing what I'm doing. But you're right. I just do what I'm doing, always have, always will, don't really care about fame. Okay, that's not something that interests me all that much. Otherwise, I'd probably be touring a lot more. But I just, I want to make music and have a good time doing it, and make sure that the supporters hear good music when we play it. That's honest, straight from the heart. And so I don't tour as much for that very, very reason. I'm not chasing anything, to tell you the truth.
Well, a lot of these artists, I think, they tour, and some of them, I think, make the mistake of over-touring, and some of them have to do it out of necessity because that's the only way they can make a living these days. Record sales, record deals aren't what they once were. Throughout the 70s, with the deals you had and all the big shows you did, were you smart with your budgeting and your money and able to set yourself? No. Oh, you weren't.
No. I don't even own a home.
Oh, okay.
I'm a guy that lives in a rental and drives a 15-year-old car. I don't I have a nice family with daughters, and we all do whatever we can to survive. I'm the same guy I was in 1971, but except I'm an older body. But no, I didn't. There was no money. The money that it looked like there was, that illusion of the money, it was all spent at the studio. It was all, paid back to the record company. I've never seen a, royalty check from them. And so we were not that kind of act. Now, I know some acts have made, they've done well with whatever money they've had, and they've, got, some of them have TV shows. But, that was never me. And I can certainly tell you that the music industry has certainly not been something that made me any kind of money of note. Okay, it looked like it did, because we're playing a lot of big places and we're doing a lot of records, but all of it was spent on that, and there was always some manager or some agent or some record person who was telling you, we're going to put this up and you got to spend it on this or spend it on that. So none of us came away with any kind of serious dough. Otherwise, I'd probably have a house today, and I don't, and I never will. So that's about the end of that,
The other big difference you talk about between you now and the younger Frank Marino, because I know that this played a role in your exploration of music, and that was when you were much younger, you did drugs. You had issues with LSD and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was really
way before. That's what people don't understand. I started, it was the hippie generation, 1967, Summer Love, all that kind of stuff. And I was the young kid who had the older brothers and the older sisters who were into that whole, hippie thing. And so I was the mascot kid that they would drag along because I was 3 or 4 years younger than they were. And of course, I started doing all the stuff that everyone was doing, which was, smoking grass and hash and dropping acid. Now, by the time I blew my mind on it, which was in 1968, I never did another drug or a drink again. And I only started playing guitar in 68 when I blew my mind, because I actually learned to play guitar while I was in the hospital. So there's a thinking out there that I did this entire psychedelic music career, which I do, based on the fact that I was taking drugs and getting high. I have not had a drug or a drink since I came out of the hospital, but all my music is certainly very much influenced by it. And so, no, drugs like LSD played a part in shaping, let's say, who I became when I became this musician. And yes, it took a long time to wear off with the situation that I had. So naturally, a lot of my early music, and especially the earliest stuff, was very, very much about that kind of experience. Not about the drugs themselves, but about trying to express those feelings. But that was not the way that I was approaching music at all. In a sense, music for me, and guitar especially, was just a way to try to find how to express what I had been going through with that what I call the trip, the mahogany rush, which is where the words come from. That trip.
So there was one specific thing, Frank, that you did where you overdid it and it just sent you into a spiral that you were actually hospitalized?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Like, I had been doing it for a couple of years, and I was a young little kid, and I shouldn't have been doing it at all. And, I ended up literally in an asylum for children. And I had to work my way out of that. and that did not just go away in a week. I had been a drummer as a kid. I'm still a drummer. Loving Buddy Rich and jazz and Elvin Jones and playing jazz drums. And I always thought maybe one day I'll be a drummer. And then in the hospital they certainly didn't have a set of drums, so there happened to be a guitar there, and that was one of the ways I would by concentrating on doing something other than freaking. The guitar became almost like, you're in the ocean, you grab onto a piece of floating wood, and I just, stayed with it and stayed with it and stayed with it for no other reason than to just not have to think about the other thing. And when I finally came out, I went out and in a couple of times over the next year or so, and when I finally came out, I was a guitar player. But I wasn't a guitar player to be in a band. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a guitar player in a band. So I would go out and find friends and say, hey, do you want to go over to so-and-so's house and play with me? That's how the band sort of started. And that's why it wasn't about let's be in a band, let's have a record deal, let's go do gigs. There was absolutely none of that in the reasoning behind playing the music I did. And my friends weren't like that either. We were all of the same mind. Let's just have fun. I guess I've often said it's like this, the kids that got into the video games, at some point they would take their PlayStations or whatever, their Nintendo machines, over to their friend's house to play games. They certainly didn't do it with the idea that they were going to become programmers. They were just doing it, and, they were taking their PlayStations over to their friends' houses, and we were taking our guitars and drum sets over to our friends' houses. It was the same type of idea. And business interests, people that did have record companies, figured, hey, let's get these kids to go into the studio and record records, and we can sell it and we can make money on it. And of course, because we were kids, we just sort of said, yeah, where do you want me to sign it? Just because they were going to give us equipment and go in the studio and make music. And consequently, made a lot of stupid mistakes early on, agreeing to the wrong kinds of things. If I had to do it over again, or if my kids wanted to do it, I'd certainly say, be very careful about what you do with these people, because they're not your friends. That's basically my point.
So, Frank, where is the music business for you at now after you said nearly 50 years? I know you did this show. I know looking at your website, there are no dates currently announced. Where do you want to go? I mean, the business is so different now than, of course, when you started. Do you want to be more active and it's just not, the opportunities aren't there, or is it just your own decision to not really play as much or get out there as much as you once did?
Well, look, as you well know, yes, it has changed, but so has the expenses. So the point is, for an act to go on the road today, it's not the same as an act to go on the road in the 70s. The opportunities are not the same number, the monies are not the same, and the expenses are a lot higher. So for me to say, let's go out on the road, there's two things that either have to happen. You either have to hook up with people who do that kind of thing. We're talking managers, agents, the system. You have to join the system. Or you have to do it yourself. Now, I've always been the type of guy that would rather do it myself, because I don't like the system. I don't think the system is fair to artists, and I don't think it's fair to the public. So I, as much as I can, I like to do things myself. When you do that, the only thing you can do is do it when you can afford to do it. So selling something like the DVD, the Blu-ray, if it sells, enough copies and makes some money, absolutely I want to go on the road, because we love doing it. But if it doesn't, it's not like I can invent the money out of thin air to put the band on the road, and then the only other opportunity is go and sign up with some management company or some record company or some agency, where then all of a sudden they're doing it their way, and I really don't agree with that. So consequently, you don't see me touring as much. You see me touring every once in a while, sometimes not at all in a year, sometimes for only 30 days. I used to tour 300 days. I love playing. We love it. We love it so much that when we are playing, our sound checks are like 4 hours long. We don't just go in there and check our equipment. We go in there and play all day, and then we play all night. But that's where we come from. That's the mentality of who we are and where we come from. But if you can't do it, you just can't do it, and I'm okay with that. If we can't do it, we can't do it. I'll never chase the industry or chase the gigs or chase the fame or whatever, because I really don't care about that. I care about making good music, and I care that if I do make good music live, the public, the people that support you, have to not be disappointed in what you're doing. I've seen too many people come out of too many shows where they've paid, nowadays they're paying $800 for some tickets to some shows.
Yeah, it's insane.
And they come out and they go, I paid $600 or $800, and I got to go and meet the guy and shake his hand, and it's like, are you serious? Like, they're actually charging money to meet you and sign a piece of paper? Like, that is like insane. This is like, where have we gotten to? It's obscene that people are doing that.
We talk about it all the time. It's the Wild West out there. I mean, depending upon the band, there's a laundry list of quote-unquote experiences that you can buy, and everything is for sale. Everything you see on that stage is for sale. Every experience, it's incredible.
That's totally obscene. It should not be that way. Look, these people are selling access to their signature or whatever it is they're doing at some of these newer groups. I don't know who they are, okay? But I don't really follow it all that much. But the way I look at it is this. In the old days, in the 70s, some of these guys, you were not even allowed to watch them walk out of their car or go back to their car. There'd be guards all over them, and you weren't allowed to talk to them. And now they just want to meet you because you're going to pay them $600 to sign their paper. I just think that's ridiculous. I just never did it that way. I never will do it that way. And I think that the prices, for some of these tickets to these shows, I see a lot more people come away from those shows and tell you that they didn't think it was worth it. Then I see people that say, hey, I spent, $800 and got these tickets, and wow, was it ever amazing? You'll get a few guys that'll say that, but the great majority will tell you, well, I had to do it because I thought I'd never see them again. That's basically why they go and they do it. I don't get it. I just don't get it. So that's just never going to be me. I'm the same guy I always was, and when I'm playing a gig, I don't hide out in the dressing room. If I want to watch the other band, I'll go in the crowd. Nobody's going to bug you. It's the Woodstock mentality. It's sort of how I think,
Well, Frank, when you were growing, you're Canadian, and when you were growing up in Canada as a kid, what were the bands that you were seeing that came through Canada that really shaped you and that inspired you or influenced you to want to play music and have this attitude about music where you're so pure in the way you want to deliver it and present to the fans? What was it that shaped you as a kid that you saw?
Well, we got the same bands. I saw the Dead, I saw the Airplane, like a free concert in the center of Montreal. I saw Jimi Hendrix and actually left because I thought it was, noisy. I left Jimi Hendrix's concert. We had these groups, but that wasn't really what was shaping me. It wasn't, like I said, I was a drummer before I was a guitar player, so I was more shaped by drummers and bands, and I wanted to play jazz. But to be shaped by the music scene, we're talking, post 67, 69, to be shaped by the camaraderie that was going on between groups. It was normal. Like if you were doing local festivals or you were watching other bands who were bigger, more famous, everybody was kind of friendly. It was like a camaraderie, and everybody felt like they were doing the same thing. And then when I finally got in the scene in the 70s, and especially towards the mid to late 70s, I saw a lot less camaraderie, to the point where by the 80s I just had enough. I just walked away from Columbia. I said, I don't want anything to do with this system, and I'm just going to do everything on my own. And I didn't, I left Columbia. They didn't leave me. And so I just said no. I want to stay true to what it was that made me love this when I was young. Whether it was the Jimi Hendrixes or the Johnny Winters or the guys that I just loved what they did musically. It was about the sound, not about the spectacle. And by the way, Eddie, anybody listening to this who's like of a slightly older age will tell you, we never called them anything but concerts. We'd say, are you going to the so-and-so concert? We didn't say show. We didn't say spectacle. It They became shows and spectacles. The music got put back to the second rate. It was like people weren't even looking at the music anymore. We weren't listening. They were just looking. And
were you ever?
I don't want that. I want it to be about the music, really, not about the personality.
Were you ever approached, or did you ever have any interest in joining another band? Did an established band ever come to you at some point and say, hey, would you be interested in joining up? We need a guy, or did that not appeal to you?
Well, on 2 occasions, I was offered that. On the first occasion, I was only 17, I think, or maybe even 16, 17. Paul McCartney was putting Wings together, and somebody came to me from a record label, said, Paul McCartney's putting a band together, and they might want, you could probably get that gig if you go and try. And I said I wasn't interested. And the reason I wasn't interested was because I didn't want to leave my friends behind, which was my, drummer and bass player. So I said, no. The next time that happened was about 10 or more years later. They were putting together the band called Whitesnake, I think, with David Coverdale. And I was in Germany at the time. And again, it came to me from business people. And they say, we're putting together this group, and it's going to be with David Coverdale and blah, blah, blah. And they might want a guitar player. Would you like to be in it? And I said, no, I'm really not interested in doing that, because that would have meant that I was going after a career. And that's just not me. I'm not at all. It's like the last guy to go after a career. It's like, to me, it's kind of funny. It's really comical that people chase that kind of thing. Like I said, the personality shouldn't matter. It's about the music and who's making, and how the music is being made. And when we play a concert, I don't think anybody leaves disappointed. And it's not because we're amazing players. It's because I think they can understand that there's an organicness to it, a kind of an honesty to it, that we're just putting our best foot forward and trying to do whatever we can at the time.
Yeah, which is becoming increasingly rare. One last thing I wanted to ask you, which I read, and I was always wondering if this was true. Are you one of the first people to ever play a guitar wirelessly?
I think I am, because Ken Schaefer, who invented the Schaefer Vega wireless diversity system, he brought me the prototype, because I've always been a very technical guy. I build my own gear and stuff, And so he used me as a kind of a guinea pig. I still have it. It's like a yellow version of it. It's really weird. And he gave that to me. And in those days, I was getting a lot of flack because of the whole Hendrix thing. And people were saying, this guy, saying all that kind of nonsense. And so I used to tape the transmitter with gaffer tape right to the face of my guitar, so that people would, because I knew they'd see no chord, and then they'd think, oh, he's faking, So
which there's a lot of that going on today too, Frank. Yeah, that's the biggest problem going on today.
To the front of the guitar to show people there was a device there, and they wouldn't think I was faking. And then there was this article once in Cream magazine or something that said, oh, Frank Marino's crazy. He tapes his cigarettes to the front of his guitar. They thought it was a cigarette pack. Yeah, but I was one of the first, if not the first. And yeah, that's when it started. I haven't ever used the chord since, by the way. That was, 75?
Really? Wow, yeah. That's interesting, because there's people that still to this day swear by the chord. And you broke the chord a long time ago.
Yeah, the techie guys that swear by the chord don't understand why they like the chord. They can tell you, well, it sounds warmer and this and that. I can tell you the technical reason why that is, but if you know that, you can make your own wireless sound exactly the same. It's just that they don't realize what's happening when they use the chord electronically and why they like it. So I've used one ever since, because I know technically how to make my amps or my gear sound like I want to. And so I've used it because I just think the idea of being chained to a chord is really, look at everyone with their phone today. Imagine if they all had cords. Imagine the traffic jam.
Bit inconvenient for sure.
Yeah.
Frank, I enjoyed the hell out of talking to you, man. I really did. And it's long overdue, and I'm glad we had the chance to do it, and hopefully we'll do it again soon. I'm out of time here at the moment, but I want to tell everybody once again to check out Frank's brand new 6-hour live concert DVD Blu-ray. It's a whole box. You get everything in there. It's a beautiful set. MahoganyRush.net. If you go there.
.com.
Oh, okay. It came up for me as .net, but or .com.
It's .net/DVD, but yeah, it gets you there. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. More specifically, mahoganyrush.net/DVD if you want to get right to the page that has the information about getting this incredible set that you've put out. And fingers crossed, man. I hope I get a chance to see you live. I know you did a show in New York a number of years ago, but we'll keep an eye on the website and keep me posted should you do some dates, and we'll help you get the word out.
I would love it. Thank you, Eddie. It's been great talking to you. Great talking to your people, and I hope we get together sometime soon.
Same here, Frank. Thanks so much. Take care, okay?
All right, man. Ciao.
See ya. There he goes, everybody. Frank Marino. Huge thanks to Frank Marino. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks earlier to Vivian Campbell, who you can see touring with Last in Line. Their latest album is Last in Line 2. And, of course, touring with Def Leppard, who seem to always be on tour these days. Hope you guys enjoyed this week's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to follow on social media at Eddie Trunk, Twitter and Instagram predominantly. EddieTrunk.com is the official online home. And be sure to listen to me if you're in the U.S. and Canada and a SiriusXM subscriber. If you're in the U.S. and Canada and you're not on board with Trunk Nation, please look into becoming a subscriber. Even try the trial subscription, which you can do at SiriusXM.com. I think you will absolutely enjoy what I do on a daily basis for Trunk Nation.